welcome to the Apocalypse Gym podcast. I'm Justin Klein, and this podcast is designed to bring you people who have fought back at life and are better people because of it. It could be mental, could be physical, could be spiritual battles, but they suffer through them. They have a story, and they want to share that story so that everyone out there, you, the listener, the survivors, can hopefully listen and learn and apply what they have gained through their experience to your life and hopefully make you a better person on the backside. Now, this podcast is brought to you by Drink Armor. Let me move my coffee cup here. Right? They make a bunch of cool weightlifting items that you can get. And if you check out their website, check out our link and use our code down in the show notes below. We get a little bit of that profit, which will go directly to benefiting the podcast and helping us spread the message of all of our survivors out there, and hopefully can make everyone a little bit better. So let's get to the show and our next guest. All right, welcome everybody. As you see on your screen, or if you're on a audio platform listening, I have with me J-Dubs, or Jennifer Woolums, an outstanding individual, if I have to say so myself, one of the best NCOs I've ever had work for me. We met while I was hanging out in Fort Benning, Georgia, for like the 40th time in my lifetime. She is, like I said, one of the best NCOs I've ever worked with. I don't know how she does it, but not only does she balance work, she balances life with her husband and her son. And she also runs I don't know if I say runs, but she manages a cup and sticker and t-shirt company, side gig, whatever you want to call it, called Chunk Company, which, I have multiple items from. Sporting my Merc Garage shirt that Chunk Company made, and then my custom made hand grenade, smoke grenade coffee cup that I got going on here. So easy pitch for Chunk Company. So hit her up. She'll make you something maybe if she likes you or not. But Jennifer, I'll leave it to you. Let's hear your story and we'll get into it.
So thank you for the very nice introduction. I appreciate that you feel like I was one of the best NCOs that you've worked with, because when I joined the Army in 2011, I didn't even think I was good enough to be in this organization. Where I came from was a little rough. I was doing not good person things to survive. And the longer that I had been in, and I learned to live by the Army values and grow into the leader that I have become, is all due to other people who have kind of just believed in me to do those things. They saw things in me that I didn't see. And that's one of the things that while we were at Benning and you have the opportunity to pick a sergeant first class to take over as a senior drill sergeant, you identified that I was fully capable as a Sergeant E5 to be able to run a platoon. And you're like, it doesn't matter about rank. It doesn't matter that she's not infantry. You were just like, no, this is who I want, right? And so I fought really hard to be the equal to the guys that I was working with. I was a support MOS with a bunch of infantry dudes. I was already not doing good off the rip, and it just reminded me that there's just so many. Yes, there's a lot of bad leaders in the Army, right? Toxic leaders and leaders who have come up too quickly and just weren't ready for that position. But I've had so many good ones that have driven me to continue to do what I do. Now, I don't think by any means I'm perfect, but I do love this organization. I love everyone that I've come across to work with, from the infantry to other support MOSs to MI to aviation. They've all kind of just helped me grow and to be who I wanted to be before I joined the Army. I didn't think that I was going to be in as long as I was. But learning that I love to be a leader. I love to teach, coach, and mentor. And I got promoted to sergeant in 2015. And so I was like 4 or 5 years in at the time. And ever since then, I was just like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do for a long time, whether it's in this organization or outside of this organization. And I devoted everything to it. I devoted my time, my resources, my money, like everything I could do to make my teams better, my organization better. And I never really had too many run-ins where I had to really prove myself, or who I was or what my capabilities were. And it seemed like the more responsibility or the more rank that I had gotten, I seemed like you had to fight for it more. When I became pregnant in 2016, I was treated as less than. Obviously, I was kicked out of the motor pool due to fumes and other toxic things that could have been in there. So I became an orderly room clerk during that time, which did not help in any way, shape, or form the way that people treated me. But I was definitely like, oh, well, you're pregnant, you're useless. And actually that's come up again with another soldier of mine recently. And I don't know how we get away from it, right? And you have these soldiers, you have these female leaders, and we fight every day to make sure that you don't look at me as a female. You look at me as a soldier. I'm a soldier, right? Once I had my son, everything changed. I was still a leader. I was still an NCO. And I was like, oh, it's going to be easy once he gets here to be able to balance all of these things. I can assure you that's not the case.
No.
It became, again, even harder to earn the trust of my organization, my team and my platoon. And, in my son's youngest days, I was still kind of a fresh NCO in the motor pool. So mostly male leadership. Not to take away that they were very great leaders, but I was the only one that was staying up late to make sure training was conducted properly. I was the only one that was, making sure these soldiers got counseled. I was the one, working hard for these soldiers' careers. And not to say that I was the only one, but I will tell you, my counterparts made it seem so effortless, right? Because it was like they already have their foot in the door. And I was like, I'm not trying to outshine anybody. I'm trying to keep up. I'm trying to show you that I'm just as valuable to the team as everybody else. And then we PCS to JBLM from Hood after my son was born. Kind of low key, not really too many things going on. And that is where we called branch and we're like, we hate JBLM. We want to get out of here. They're like, okay, well, looks like you're going to be drill sergeants then. And then we became drill sergeants.
That's a rough phone call right there.
Huh?
I said, that's a rough phone call right there.
It was. We were actually at a SFAB meeting. And I was like, hey, this is a great opportunity for one of us, right? Because we have a son, one of us needs to be present, right?
Yeah.
If one of us wants to go do high speed, cool guy stuff, like we fully support. And that is one of the greatest things that in our relationship, is that whatever it is, whatever time it is, we fully support the other person. And we came out of the SFAB meeting and I was like, hey man, if you want to do it, like, go ahead. And he got on the phone with Branch and Branch was like, oh, looks like there's 2 drill sergeants. Let's go. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that's not where I saw that going, but okay, we're going to be drill sergeants.
Oh man.
And we got on the trail. And again, like I said, it felt like the more responsibility, the higher up in rank, the more I had to fight. And I saw in the infantry specifically, right? Because that's who we were working with. Not necessarily on the line, but just a small taste, a small group of infantrymen. And it was very clear that, they had just opened up the combat MOSs to the females,
Right.
that the older infantrymen were just not ready. They
No,
were not ready.
no, they were not.
And I don't
think half
back,
of them
it was
still are.
correct. And I still see it very minimally because I don't work so closely with them now. But it was so cool to see the change in the group that we did have on the trail, right? Like, we had one drill sergeant that blatantly to my face said, you didn't deserve that MSM because you only got it because you were a female. And you're just like, I know where that's coming from. You can say what you want, right? But I know it's because you don't have any comparison to have worked with other females.
Right.
Right. You may think it's a gender thing where I work just as hard as you. I worked the same hours and the same shifts, and I did the same. I ran just as many PT sessions, and I ran just as many FTXs, and I ran all these things, right? Just like you did. So why don't I deserve it? Just because you think it's because I'm a female. And the group that we were in, to see their minds change, right? And for them to say, like, I never thought working with a female like you was going to happen in my career. Females that could keep up. No, granted, running, not it. Not keeping up. You're on your own. But I never came in there and said, hey, I'm going to be just as good as you. I'm going to be better than you. No, I came in there and said, we're going to be a team. Whether you want me here or not, we're here. And we're going to be productive members of your team. And again, it was, this one specifically sticks in my mind. I had a patrol base that I was fixing to go sit in. And there was one drill sergeant in particular that just could not get it with me. Didn't do anything to this person. And he stole my patrol base. And the anger and the rage that he stole my patrol base, that he knew I was going to sit in. And I didn't look at it as anything other than, man, this guy's a turd. What a jerk thing to do.
I would say most likely he was threatened by your success.
Someone brought that up to me and I was like, I really don't like to look at it that way. I choose not to look at it from those points of view because that's where the woe is me comes in, and the pity parties and the, feel bad for me because, of who I am, what I am might be. And I was like, okay, take this for a little bit. Yes, partially probably because of that. Right. And then you try to talk to that person and say, hey, man, I really didn't like that you did that. And then it becomes blatant that was just the reason why they would have done something like that. Right. I try to always give people the benefit of the doubt because I think that there is good in everybody. Right. I don't think people are just hateful for no reason. I don't think that people can't be changed. Right. Like I said, I've seen this whole group of 15, 16-year infantrymen be like, okay, we got girls on the team now. This is great.
Yeah. I mean, with that, I know from when I was there, between you and Perez, I think the both of you was what convinced that group. It sounds terrible, but you two are the ones who started the trend that showed everyone that females can be just as valuable on the line as everybody else. Because I think a little bit, and you hit it earlier, you always were just trying to keep up. And I think you had a little bit of an inferiority complex. So you were working so hard to try to make yourself equal to everybody. When in reality, from what I saw, was you were working twice as hard and you were making yourself if everyone's here, you were up here. And again, that's why, me and Captain Monkman, we both were when it came to picking a senior drill sergeant, we're like, there's hands down, Woolums is the best one to do this because I mean, you admitted it, you may not have been able to, crush a 5 miler, but that one small event was kind of like a small thing compared to like all of the stuff that you did when it came to the techniques, the tactics, and just your leadership ability for all of those trainees, whether they're male or female, was above and beyond everybody else's. And it was the same thing for Perez. You two really opened the door for all those other female drill sergeants that came in, and you gave them the chance, in all honesty, to excel within our company because you two had already opened the door and cleared the way for them to just walk behind you. And that's a fact.
Well, Perez is my hero. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But I mean, that's when I first got there and I met her. I'm glad you brought her up because that was who I wanted to be on the trail. Right?
You can
like
still be
I
infantry.
know
I'm sure I can get paperwork and I can turn you infantry if you want.
I'm sorry, I think your speaker went out. So when I first met her, like immediately, I was like, these are the footsteps I want to follow in. I want to be held in such a high regard the way that she is because she cares about this position. And I think this was before I knew that she was going to go to be in the infantry. But I took all of her notes. I took all of her little books, her little playbooks, all her stuff to learn and be like, you're never going to tell me that I can't teach this or I can't be effective at this. Right. And when I saw just how she would teach or how she would get out there, I'm like, yeah, I want to be that. And then she's like, I'm going infantry. And I was like, I don't want to be that, but I want to be good enough to train him. I don't ever want someone to say, hey, that female trained those infantrymen and they aren't anything. They're not worth a damn.
Yeah.
I wanted to be like, yeah, those females got out there and they were just as good as their male counterparts.
I mean, it showed, and you proved that because every time we had somebody high ranking come and visit our battalion, who did they always pick? Oh, hey, Delta Company. Hey, can you guys show, this 4-star, admiral around or whatever? And guess who I picked? Hey, Woolums, we got another one. And it was, you were always the one because you knew that you were, you were the one. It was an easy pick every time.
I love talking to high ranking people. I love when they come down to the motor pool. I love when they come down anywhere in RAO, and I will volunteer every time, right? Specifically because they don't know what we're doing in our areas, right? And like who was it that came down? Sergeant Major.
Talking to the Trade Sergeant Major?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he got to talking about like the hats and stuff, right? How they were going to take the female campaign hat away and turn it into the round brown and everyone's going to get the same thing. And I told him, I was like, no, like that's terrible. That's a terrible idea. And he's like, well,
the campaign hat's really uncomfortable in that bush hat. That's like pajamas on your head. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worn Rays to try it on and I'm like, this is stupid. Like these women that want this are high because there's no way. Right? They leave like the little red mark right at the top of the nose. And I'm never scared to tell the story, right? I'm never scared to say like, that's a terrible idea. But being able to be tactful about saying that that's a terrible idea. That is something, there are a lot of skills the Army has given me. And tact is definitely one of them. Yeah. And I appreciate that because there was a day where there was no filter and there was no tact and there was just, cuss words and you didn't have an appreciation for the environment or anything like that. And you get to a point in your career and you're like, you want to tell someone to take a hike and to look forward to the trip. Like that's a skill. That's a skill the Army gives you. Yeah. Right. And so when these high ranking people come down, I love telling them what it is. And I love showcasing soldiers when they come down and they talk to us and they walk through our motor pool. And they're like, well, who did this? And who did that? And where are these things? And how are these things going? And you're like, you're not putting on the dog and pony show for these guys. I like showing them like, hey, boots on ground. We're crushing it down here. Look at all these great things that we're doing. Look at all the great things that Delta Company is doing. That's why, like, when I got picked, I said, yeah, send me. I want to go. Right. I want to tell everyone I come in contact with how great the people around me and the team that I'm working with are. They don't see that. And like our leadership when we were in Delta Company, we thought Delta Company was the greatest thing on Sand Hill.
We
We
were.
were the standard. We
Yeah, we
were
were.
what you wanted to produce infantrymen, right? And we had that pride and we had that skill. And I didn't really see that in other companies or, any other battalions or something like that. Like we had each other's backs. Like we were going to fight for each other. And we were going to go down if we thought we were right. And we had great leaders like you and Captain Monkman. Like as long as we knew we were right and we weren't breaking rules or regulations or hurting anybody physically, mentally, emotionally, doing anything immoral or unjust, we knew that we were going to be okay, and I strive every day to be a leader like that. I strive to die on the hills because our leadership, back in Delta, above us, above you and Captain Muckman, they weren't, right? So like at every echelon, there's someone who is that protector from the top to the bottom. And I've decided that is from my bottom to my top, that's going to be me. I'm going to die on the hills. I'm going to be that leader that if you are right, we are going to fight every fight that it takes to make sure that it happens. And I think part of the problem we're having right now is there's not enough leaders that are doing that still. A lot of them, probably a few years younger than me, are dying out. They've had enough.
Well, they're sick of leaders basically throwing the younger soldiers under the bus. Like something bad happens, instead of saying, hey, you know what? It's my company. We screwed up. We'll fix it and drive on. Like, oh, well, those stupid soldiers over there, they did it. And soldiers are like, man, if you ain't looking out for me, I ain't looking out for you. Like, and that's what, between me, Captain Monkman, Captain Asa, like, we knew it was the drill sergeant's company. Captain Monkman, or Specialist Monkman, I should say. He knew he was a signature, right? And I know he's going to listen to this, so he's going to laugh. He was a signature, and he acknowledged it all the time. He's like, I'm just here to sign stuff.
Yeah.
And all I did was I acted as, if we're bowling, I'm the bumpers in the bumper lane. Like I kept you guys between left and right. We let you guys roll with whatever you wanted because it was your company, you're running it, right? And just like you said, like we made sure that we followed all the policies, we followed all the regulations, and we weren't doing anything illegal or immoral. And I think that's why, our company was so successful, is because there was so much buy-in from everybody because everybody owned it. It wasn't what Captain Monkman said. It wasn't what, I said. It was like the drill sergeants ran the company and we just made sure you guys didn't kill anybody. That's essentially what it boiled down to.
Yep. And I 100% agree with that. And so got on the trail and go back to balancing work life and family. And I didn't. We just didn't see each other for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I know it was rough. I know you talked about it.
It was very difficult. We had a wonderful care provider, and I could 100% tell you I would have not have gotten through it if we didn't have good care for our son. But with Ray being over in the BCT, me being over in the OSET, I never saw my son. And then people ask me, like, how did you maintain your marriage while you were on the trail? He would bring me lunch to the range a couple times a week. And then, like we would go help each other grade PT tests and we would see each other. And, I had staff duty quite a bit because, being gender integrated, there always had to be a female. So females pulled a lot of staff duty. I looked forward to those days because at minimum, the next day I was going to see my family for a few hours.
Yeah.
And granted, not a lot of time off or anything, but like those moments were cherished. So for 2.5 years, my son grew up, learned how to really develop, sentences and kind of come into his personality by the time we left in really 2020.
Yeah.
And so he was going on 5 when we left. We were there for 2.5 years. So there's just 2.5 years that if I didn't have pictures, I would not be able to recollect it at all. Now, I am grateful that we did that broadening assignment when he was so young. He's not going to remember so much us not being there. That memory kind of formed more towards the end when we said like, hey, like when COVID came around, he kind of had a good understanding of COVID and like other things that were happening. But like before that, like he was 2 and some change maybe. So like there's really no memory of us not being there.
Right.
Now we're here at Stewart and we're kind of in and out quite a bit. We do a lot of field time. We love to go tact camping here at Stewart.
Tact camping, I like that.
And so there's a lot of see you laters, and it is rough on him every time. I think the first time that we had actually left him with our long-term care provider, we were going to the academy together because we went at the same time. And it was very difficult for me. Like that was the first time I was really away from him. And, this is when I really learned like how resilient he is. Like military kids are the most resilient human beings on the planet.
Yeah, fact.
You could not change my mind if you tried. Because yes, they're sad. Yes, goodbyes are hard. Friends PCS and, mom and dad's in the field in and out or, rotations or this. But like once they're over that little hump, it's just like, hey, we're cruising now. It's good. It's fine.
Yeah.
But now he's in the stage of remembering and it is very difficult. I just came out of the field last week. Our field was cut short due to a loss in our formation. So we came back so we could, pay our respects and things like that. And we have to go back out to finish up the training in the middle of this month. And I'm just like, I don't know how to tell him that. Right.
Yeah, that's
His dad
hard.
left this year. I left. And now I'm like, oh, hey, bud.
This wasn't expected, but mommy's got to go back tact camping again.
And again, there's tears and there's the sadness, but once that person's gone, I think he does really well. I also believe that we may have caused some sleep anxiety because we usually leave in the middle of the night or when it's dark.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
So he does not sleep on his own. Like he's not like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to lay down and go to sleep. Because he's like, where are you? What are you doing? Where are you going? And I'm like, I'm really just giving him stuff to talk about in therapy when he gets there, when he's 11. He's going to be fine.
Yeah, he'll be fine eventually.
But I could not be in this organization as involved as I am if he wasn't the way that he was. He has always been so good, just a good kid in general. Now, I'm going to caveat that. He's not a saint. I don't think he can do no bad. He is rotten some of the time. But his personality and his behavior and his resiliency has allowed me to continue what I'm doing. Because there have been times where I'm like, I'm just going to call it a day. He's asked me questions like, well, my friend's mom stay home and clean the house.
Ooh, that's a rough one.
Yeah. They do, buddy, right? Or like, cause Sundays are my cleaning day, right?
Yeah.
Sundays I get to pick up the tornado that has ripped through our house. And he's like, well, I really want to go do this. And I'm like, yeah, but we got to pick up the house, right? This is just the day. He's like, well, why can't you do it like my friend's moms? Or why can't you pick up after me like my friend's moms? Or why do you have to go to work? My friend's moms don't.
Yeah, those are rough questions.
They are. And, I go back to like, hey, we've all picked different roads in life, right? And that's the road they picked, right? And I'm very happy that we have friends like that. I said, but mom has picked this road. I have worked very hard on this road. And as long as you support me on this road, I'm going to continue on this road. And I had a conversation with like, hey, bud, mom might be getting out of the Army. And he squared up with me and was like, not squared up, but like,
no, you're not.
Put his hands on my shoulder, like looked me in the eye and was like, no, mom, you can't.
Yeah. See, I like your kid more and more every time he talks. You're not getting out.
I'm like, but you didn't let me finish. Like all the good things that could come with mom getting out. And he's like, no. He's like, you gotta be a soldier. And I'm like, huh, that's rough. That's
Yeah.
rough, um, but as long as I have his support and his understanding, like I'm gonna keep doing it until he tells me like he's had enough. Because like I told my sergeant major about re-enlisting, I was like, this is a contractual obligation for me, which I understand and I respect, and I'm gonna do the best that I can as long as I'm under contractual obligation. I said, but my son didn't choose to be here, and that's
Yeah.
not the Army's problem, right? I chose to bring my son here. So I'm going to give him the best life that I can.
Right.
Right. And I will absolutely finish out my contractual obligation honorably. But at the end of the day, if I don't have his support, what is the point of me carrying on?
Yeah.
Because I could be here for the sons and daughters of America day in and day out. But if I'm not there for my own son of America, what's really the point?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, families, everybody kind of mentions it when they talk about the military, but I think families do kind of get looked over and the hardships that they do endure. I mean, I just went to El Paso for 3 weeks a little bit ago, and my wife held it down. I mean, my children, I should specify, my children drive me crazy pretty much every day. And so we, trade back and forth like, all right, go bother your mother now because I can't deal with you anymore. But when I'm gone, like she doesn't have anyone to pawn them off on anymore.
Yeah.
So like for 3 weeks, she dealt with, my kids, between getting allergy shots and dance classes and cross country and swim class. And I was like, I don't know how you do it. I can barely manage my own life, let alone your life, 2 other children's lives. I don't even, the families are super important. I just don't know how. Yeah. I mean, and I know you struggled with, well, not struggled, but you had that fight when you and Ray were both drill sergeants with, because you're staying at the caretakers overnight, or what time am I getting off? What time is Ray going to be leaving? Trying to figure that schedule out. It was just crazy to see you work through that, but you did. And, I mean, I've met your little hellion. I mean, he's a pretty awesome little kid. So, I mean, you and Ray have done an incredible job raising him, Dalton, I should say his name. I don't want to say him. Raising Dalton in quite a chaotic, childhood, because you both chose to serve your country. I'm not really sure what Ray's choice was or why, but I know you chose kind of like me, like you weren't making great life choices and you decided to join the Army. And me, I was, just crushing mailboxes while I was drinking underage. And, here I am 17 years later. Although apparently my mom or brother looked up my criminal record, and I don't have 14 felonies on my record apparently, but I know I had, 14 felonies, whatever. Anyway, bad choices got me here. Bad choices got you here. But I got the warning from Zoom, because I don't pay for it. So before we get too far, and I think we probably got, 6 or 7 minutes left, as that giant yellow duck is staring me in the face, tell me how Chunk Company comes into all this.
I totally forgot. I just was, anyway, so I'm very great at creating my own chaos. I've operated in chaos for years. Growing up in homes with addiction, alcoholism, like I perform very well. When there's no chaos in my life, I find destructive ways to create it. So when I was coming off the trail, I knew that if I didn't fill that void of the rip and run and go all the time, I was going to be destructive other places, like with my husband and with my son. And those were not things that I was willing to take a chance on. Right. So right before I got off the trail, because, we were extended because of COVID. So I had 6 extra months.
Yeah.
I started Googling how to make these epoxy cups because I loved buying them for the drill sergeants as end of cycle gifts.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, these things are expensive. I bet I could learn how to make these. And so I went on, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to make sure that I do it. And I did it. I Googled and YouTubed and TikToked and a lot of trial and error. And I learned how to make the epoxy cups. And they became a big hit with the drills and as going away gifts. And so I kind of just, put my energy and my time into that, because if, like I had mentioned before, fitness wasn't really my stress reliever.
Right.
when I would go into the cup room and I would create something with my hands, whether it's a Christmas ornament, a t-shirt, a cup, a sticker, insert whatever you think you could possibly make with your hands in a room. That was my space. I wasn't mom. I wasn't sergeant. I wasn't wife. I wasn't not any of those things.
You were the Chunk Company CEO.
I'm Chunk 6. You know, I run the company, right? And then I got Chunk 7, and he's my QA/QC, right? Make sure quality control, quality assurance. And then I've got, you know, Chunk 5, the little XO over here, running around not knowing what he's doing. And we've kind of just all together have made this into a really cool family project, but it's mostly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And no one can tell me it's right or wrong. No one can tell me they don't like it or they do like it. Do I appreciate when they like it? Absolutely. But if you don't, I mean, everyone's got bad taste. You know what I'm talking about? But I appreciate like your smoke grenade cup. Like I had to think really hard how to make that, to make it realistic and, you know, to make it look like a smoke grenade. And I enjoy using that part of my brain. It keeps me busy, keeps my hands busy. And I've just loved doing it since I figured out how to do these things that I see other people do. And it's been a wild ride. It's been kind of slow because when Ray went away, I had to kind of shut most of it down to focus on Dalton, and which I'm not complaining about. I would have rather closed that part and given him all my time. But I still keep it alive. You know, I still dabble in a few things to keep Chunk Company there. Yeah. So I love it. And I am very proud of myself for all the.
Well, I'm expecting Chunk Company to explode as soon as you get out of the Army or retire, whichever one you decide it's going to be. I expect Chunk Company to be, all over Instagram, like, get your stickers, 100 for $19, Chunk Company. I'm expecting to see that.
Yeah.
So
maybe.
Yeah. So, all right, before we run out of time, I'll give you the last word, and then we'll send our listeners off into cyberspace to continue scrolling Instagram or whatever they're doing besides listening to us. You.
My last.
Yeah. Your last. Anything you want to say? Wrap it up. Life lesson. I don't know. A recipe for lemon pie. I don't know. Whatever you want.
Keep pushing. Just keep going. To anybody who's listening, it's never the end. It's never all bad, right? I could sit here and tell you there's bad things that happen in my life or in my day, but there's so much more good. And if I just keep pushing through, and I'm going to complain about it the whole time, but there is good in everything. There's good everywhere. There's good in people and things and situations. And even if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, keep pushing, because there's more. There's better. There's greatness for everybody. And I wish more people would tap into that and realize, like, you don't have to be angry. You don't have to be hateful. You could just be kind. You could just see the light at the end of the tunnel. You could just keep pushing. So.
Well, there was a quote, and this is a perfect opportunity because you were my subordinate at one point. And the quote was, it was on a podcast I listened to this to. A leader's greatest achievement is when their subordinates pass them. And you have far surpassed anything that I have ever done. The way you lead soldiers, the way you present yourself, just as a leader, seeing you succeed fills my soul. And I know that, I just hope that it's some small part of that I hope that I influenced you, and you have done a great thing. You are doing great things. I'll say it on this podcast for everybody to listen to for the rest of the life, Western, wherever. Like, I hope you don't get out. I hope you re-enlist, because you are the type of NCO that soldiers need. And the impact you can have is far greater than, anything I think you realize. So Zoom is yelling at me. We're under a minute left because I don't pay for it. So again, Jennifer, thank you for coming on. I think you have an incredible message. I'm sure you will be back on the podcast for too long, maybe for a Q&A session or something. I need to get those going. But again, thank you. And re-enlist.
Well, I'll be waiting for my letter of acceptance from Sergeant Major Driver.
Oh, it's coming. All right,
Thank
everybody.
you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. All right, everybody. Like I always say, at the end of this, go to the gym.
Go to the gym.
Go to the gym.